But once more, I think Bitcoin has the upper hand at the moment. A collection of public companies in the UK raises about $1 million to implement the Bitcoin treasury approach, correct? The Chinese public corporation DTC or DDC Enterprise intends to purchase 5,000 Bitcoin in order to establish a strategic reserve. Take a look at this. The Central Bank of Saudi Arabia recently announced that it was purchasing MicroStrategy, correct? Essentially purchasing Bitcoin indirectly since, that's a Bitcoin maxi firm. In all honesty, this is pretty bullish. Bitcoin must either pump or consolidate here if you want to see XRP soar. I take it that a pump is the best option? When this pairing is saved, it will go down, isn't that right? Bitcoin is booming, but XRP wouldn't accomplish much. This will most likely drop for a few bullish divergences on the longer time periods before exploding. It's about to blow up. I'm positive it will. Liquidity is abundant up there. It must. At some point, XRP will take that liquidity higher. The State Wealth Fund of Abu Dhabi has revealed a $48 million investment in the BlackRock bought Bitcoin ETF. Very positive news. I'd like to see that. On May 14th, BlackRock purchased ETF spot 2,000 Bitcoin and 21,000 Ethereum. Why then are they so optimistic? Correct? Why are they so optimistic? Once more today, it seems to me that since bullish divergences are about to occur, this is the last card they are attempting to play for retail in order to sell before pumping it. Very ominous of them, but I think the chart speaks for itself. Everything ultimately hinges on Bitcoin. Don't be misled just yet. Let's see what occurs next. We'll see. Look at my Sophie Mason. See you. Every single XRP holder in this market will be ecstatic if Tom Lee's prediction comes to pass, and the vast majority of those who currently own a respectable quantity will become tremendously wealthy. We need to discuss this. This needs to be addressed since it has a very high chance of occurring and you should be aware of it, particularly if you own more than just XRP. You may also hold Bitcoin or other ancient coins. Let's now discuss recent developments in the cryptocurrency space. The US-China trade agreement is undoubtedly the most significant issue at the moment. Everyone is discussing it. The reason for this is that it has a beneficial impact on everything. I've mentioned this on the channel numerous times as one of the main drivers of cryptocurrency because the current stock market activity is all related to numerous trade agreements that have been struck or are in progress over the past few weeks. We first examine the UK deal and then we examine the China deal. In addition, we may observe that the trade war is beginning to lessen somewhat. This is highly positive because it has a significant positive impact on stocks. At the same time, however, we also witnessed the addition of more than $2 trillion to the U.S. stock market at open as a result of this news. This was because the announcement was made on a Sunday, and the market was opened on Monday. Now, if we're considering this, then, well, we're considering the future of cryptocurrency. What will happen to stocks next? My primary focus is the liquidity cycle, as we have been closely monitoring it virtually every time we experience a significant bull run. You can use 2021 as an example, when the market peaked precisely at that time and the liquidity cycle did peak. We definitely have a lot more work to do when we consider where we are at this point, but we should be topping this year, which gives us plenty of time, and we could top into 2026 as well. We were approaching 2022, so it was, a lot like even 2021. We're primarily looking at the M2 supply for Bitcoin because, as you may know, you've all been paying attention to what Ralph Paul has been talking about with the M2 supply. However, liquidity will continue to improve, and I'm primarily looking at a topping point of this market sometime around the beginning of 2026. I do believe that if you haven't been paying attention to this, you're missing a significant portion of what's going on with Bitcoin, and the reasons it is, growing in value. The world's supply of M2 has been increasing. Some very significant players have taken the lead in this. China has been leading the way in the supply of M2. We are looking at the United States, and they are starting to print a lot, which will blow up the M2 supply itself. However, if we compare the worldwide M2 with the 12-week lead to Bitcoin, we can see that the latter is currently beginning to catch up to the former quite rapidly. Indeed, as you can see, Ralph Paul and Julian from GMI were spot on with this. They identified the bottoming zone surrounding Bitcoin, which is just where the M2 supply bottomed. Additionally, it was perfectly timed if we're actually relying on the 12-week lead. After that, Bitcoin fell, and we are now well above $100,000. In fact, if you look at this, we may have a small sell-off at first, but the next significant push will drive us to over $110,000. Following that, our goal for Bitcoin is $140,000, $160,000. That is a fairly good push, isn't it? Many XRP owners would undoubtedly be pleased by that, as we ought to be in an alt season at that time as well, given that Bitcoin's dominance appears to be waning. However, what if I told you that's only the beginning and that Bitcoin might rise much higher? That's what Tom Lee is saying anyway. There are actually two video snippets. First of all, we have according to Tom Lee, now that you know that the leveraging is done, I think that Bitcoin is going to catch up to gold. And this is essentially simply discussing the deleveraging of gold into cryptocurrency. Now, he made the statement in late April or early May itself, and that's just what transpired. Isn't it? Gold began to lose its appeal. After that, we began to witness the significant shift back toward Bitcoin. But take a look. Additionally, Bitcoin is up nearly 3.5%. I haven't introduced you, yet I'm already speaking with you about this. Tom Lee, the Chief Investment Officer at Fundstrat Capital, the head of research at Fundstrat, and a CNBC contributor, should be introduced. And when we were discussing how Bitcoin was kind of stalled below 85,000 but gold was rising daily, I can't recall if it was you or Pomp. And it was either you or Pomp who stated that Bitcoin often makes a significantly larger move a few months later. It was most likely Pomp. He is most likely quite bullish. Indeed. Well, have you seen anything like that? That's quite a significant change, but as you may know, gold has been declining during the last 2 to 3 months, or perhaps this year. We have witnessed gold surpass Bitcoin and reach unprecedented heights. It should be able to accomplish 4,000 with ease, right? Do you believe that Bitcoin will eventually attract some of the same bidders and some of the same money? Indeed, I believe that Bitcoin may have been having trouble with some of the deleveraging that was taking on earlier this year, as institutional investors were simply selling everything they could. Indeed, they sold what they could, which I believe suppressed Bitcoin, particularly on weekends. However, now that the deleveraging is complete, I believe that Bitcoin will overtake gold. As you may recall, Bitcoin's previous peak was over $110,000. I don't necessarily believe that it does, you know. As I mentioned earlier, my overall estimate is possibly 200K. It would be a great beginning if we reach 200K. Of course, that would be different in terms of price on XRP. Well, that's another matter. I continue to believe that XRP might reach $20 to nearly $30. Even if Bitcoin just reaches $200,000, the general notion is that if Tom Lee is right and we reach $250,000, the higher Bitcoin rises during alt season. The higher XRP and the entire old coin market actually rise as Bitcoin's supremacy declines. So, depending on how high Bitcoin really rises, this might very well be a big move on XRP. Once more, this is a 105% chance of an upward push, which is a huge push. Again, if we're performing the 8x push to the upside, the overall gain on XRP is still 840%. Taking all into consideration, then, 840% from our current position would still bring us to about $20.23. Given how high XRP is at the moment, I believe that many XRP holders will become extraordinarily wealthy. In terms of the return on